those of us who marched beneath golden eagles, our ceramite gleaming with righteous conviction. None are more deeply damned than those who once believed themselves holy. The mutation began in my left hand. A subtle change at first, barely noticeable amid the rigors of war. Finger joints stiffening, skin hardening like bark on an ancient tree. I concealed it for 17 campaigns across 3 star systems. My brothers would have executed me without hesitation had they known. Genetic deviation is unforgivable among the Emperor's finest. Even now, I remember the weight of my chainsword, vibrating with murderous intent as I severed the heads of battle brothers who showed signs of corruption. How viciously I hunted those whose genetic purity faltered. Now I stare at hands that are no longer hands, talons that shift and reform with each passing day. The flesh ripples beneath my gaze, responding to thoughts I never consciously form. The Iron Lord's chapter exists now only in my memory. I abandoned their insignia the day I fled into the screaming void that claimed my soul. 5 centuries have passed since I pledged myself to powers that promised salvation from mutation, from weakness, from decay. 5 centuries of blood and betrayal, of screaming revelation and silent horror. They call us Chaos Space Marines, as if that term encompasses the truth of our existence, as if 2 words could capture the totality of our damnation. We who were once the Imperium's sword now turned against the hand that forged us. We who bartered immortality for something far worse than death. I am Brother Raylan no longer. That name belongs to a dead man, a fool who believed genetic corruption could be bargained away through devotion to darker gods. The Black Legion welcomed me with open arms, their armor already twisted into nightmarish configurations, their flesh already surrendered to change. They spoke promises of glory, of ascension, of freedom from the hypocritical tyranny of the false emperor. What they never mentioned was the price, the true, unending cost of chaos worship. Let me tell you of the long war, mortal listener. Let me speak of the cursed eternity that awaits those who surrender their humanity to the ruinous powers. Let me chronicle the slow dissolution of mind and body that no power armor can protect against. Let me speak of the hollow glory earned in service to gods who view their most devoted servants as nothing but playthings. This is my confession, my warning, my epitaph. Though death will never claim me, I am already a corpse, a walking remnant of a being who once knew purpose. Now I know only hunger, rage, and the mocking laughter of thirsting gods. This is the story of my damnation. The void welcomes you to witness it. I will begin with the day I died. My squad deployed to the mining world of Karadesh, an unremarkable planet of modest industrial output and undistinguished faithful. The kind of world the Imperium values only for its tithes, forgotten until those tithes falter. Reports of worker unrest had reached the nearby Iron Lord's garrison. Whispers of strange symbols carved into rockreat walls, rumors of miners chanting forbidden verses in the deepest shafts, standard heretical uprising, standard compliance restoration mission. We made planetfall at dawn, 4 squads of tactical marines led by Chaplain Dorvus. The mining administrators greeted us with nervous reverence, guiding our Thunderhawk to the central processing facility. Their fear was palpable, not just fear of the heresy they reported, but fear of us, of retribution should we judge their stewardship lacking. The disturbances began 3 months ago, my lords, the chief administrator explained, his voice quavering. Production quotas fell by 7%, workers reported nightmares, machinery malfunctions increased 3-fold. Dorvus towered over the man, skull helm betraying no emotion. Show us where the symbols appeared. They led us through cramped corridors that were never designed to accommodate power armor. My pauldrons scraped against the walls, leaving gouges in the metal. The administrators winced at each screech of ceramite against the facility infrastructure. Such is the burden of Imperial worlds, to be broken by the very forces sent to protect them. The first symbol appeared on a blast door leading to Shaft 17, 8 arrows radiating from a central eye. Crude but unmistakable. The mark of chaos undivided, Dorvus said. his augmented voice echoing in the confined space. "Who discovered this blasphemy?" "Shift Supervisor Kale," the administrator replied. "He reported it immediately. We sealed the shaft." "And where is this supervisor now?" I asked. The administrator glanced nervously at his data slate. According to logs, he descended into Shaft 17 2 days ago with a security team. They never returned. Dorvus turned to our squad. "Brother Relan, take your men and secure the upper levels of the shaft. Brother Terrace, establish a perimeter around this facility. Brother Averick, interrogate all personnel who worked this section. Brother Carden, accompany me to the communication array. We must update chapter command." I nodded, cycling the action on my bolter. "As you command, Chaplain." 4 battle brothers followed me toward the sealed blast door. Multi-spectrum Auspex readings showed movement beyond, but nothing conclusive. Mining facilities always register thermal anomalies and motion disturbances. The deep places of worlds are never truly still. "Prepare for breach," I ordered, placing melter charges at the door's weak points. "Full autosense protocols. Expect warp contamination." The door disintegrated with a flash of superheated air. We advanced through the glowing aperture, bolters raised, helmet sensors adjusting to the darkness beyond. The shaft extended downward, a massive, vertical tunnel reinforced with metal struts and elevator mechanisms. The platform immediately before us was empty save for abandoned mining equipment and discarded personal items. Food rations half consumed, lumens flickering weakly. "Brother Raylan," Vox reported over the squad channel, "my Auspex is detecting multiple life signs 300 meters below." "Numbers?" I asked, moving to the edge of the platform to peer into the abyss. "Indeterminate, the readings keep shifting." That should have been our first warning. We descended via the maintenance ladders, our power armor servos whining under the strain of controlled descent. The air grew thicker as we dropped, laden with metallic particles and something else, something coppery and sweet that even our armor's filtration systems couldn't eliminate. Blood, vast quantities of it. 200 meters down, we found the first bodies. Security personnel splayed across a platform, their flesh twisted into impossible configurations. Bones protruding through skin at mathematically precise angles. Eyes replaced with geometrically perfect crystalline structures that still tracked our movement. "Throne preserve us," Brother Micros whispered, an unusual breach of discipline that I chose to ignore. "They still live," Brother Carsus said, his bolter trained on the nearest victim. "Permission to grant the Emperor's mercy?" I hesitated, studying the transformed humans. Their mutations showed pattern, purpose, design. This was no random corruption. "Negative. We need intelligence. Secure one for interrogation." That was my first error. The first of many compromises that would lead to my damnation. As Brother Carsus approached the nearest victim, the crystalline eyes pulsed with inner light. A voice emerged, not from the victim's mouth, but from the air itself, as if reality were being split to allow the words through. "The Sons of Iron come to witness the change." How appropriate. How symmetrical. I raised my bolter. "Identify, and yourself, warp entity." The light pulsed again, and every victim on the platform spoke in unison. "We are the revelation, the gateway, the mathematicians of flesh. Your brothers in transformation." "Heretics," I spat. "You have strayed from the Emperor's light." Laughter echoed from nowhere and everywhere. "The Emperor, the great deceiver who hides the truth of your existence. Look upon our metamorphosis and see your future, Iron Lord. See the glory that awaits when you surrender to change." I fired a burst into the nearest victim, explosive rounds reducing the corrupted flesh to vapor. "Purge them all," I ordered. No interrogations. My squad responded immediately, bolters barking in disciplined bursts. The platform became slick with fluids as we executed every transformed human. Yet even as their bodies were destroyed, the crystalline eyes remained intact, falling to the platform with gentle tinkling sounds like rain upon armor. Brother Carsus bent to examine one. That was our second error. "Fascinating structure," he said, holding the crystal between armored fingers. "The facets appear to shift when not directly observed." "Dispose of it," I commanded. "All warp artifacts must be purged." But even as he moved to crush it, the crystal flared with light. A beam of impossible energy lanced through his gauntlet, through the ceramite of his armor, directly into his primary heart. Carsus fell to his knees. No blood emerged from the wound, only light. The same cold, mathematical light that pulsed within the crystal. "Brother Carsus is compromised." I voxed to the squad. "Contain him." But Carsus rose before we could act, his movements jerky, as if his armor were being controlled by something unfamiliar with its operation. His helmet turned toward me, and though I could not see his face, I felt his gaze like a physical force. "Raylan," he said, his voice overlaid with harmonics that made my auto-senses shriek with feedback. "The change comes for all of us, even you, especially you. I did what any loyal space marine would do. I executed him where he stood, a burst of bolter fire separating his head from his shoulders. His body collapsed, but no blood flowed from the ragged stump of his neck, only light coalescing into crystalline structures that grew before our eyes. "Fall back," I ordered. "Full quarantine protocols. Shaft 17 requires exterminatus-level purging." We retreated up the maintenance ladders, firing downward at shapes that pursued us, writhing masses of flesh that had once been human miners. They climbed with inhuman speed, crystal growths protruding from their limbs, granting them purchase on surfaces too smooth for fingers. Brother Vox fell next, dragged from the ladder by elongated arms that should not have been able to reach him. His screams cut off abruptly, replaced by a sound like shattering glass. I did not look back. We reached the upper platform, only 3 of us remaining from the original 5. As we emerged from the shaft, I triggered the demolition charges we had placed during our descent, collapsing the entire shaft behind us. The facility shuddered as thousands of tons of rock and metal imploded. "Seal the blast door," I commanded. Nothing emerges from shaft 17. But as technicians rushed to repair the door we had melted earlier, I noticed something on my gauntlet. A small crystal fragment, no larger than a grain of sand, embedded in the ceramite. As I watched, it pulsed once with that same cold light. I said nothing, reported nothing. That was my third and final error as a loyal son of the Emperor. By the time we returned to our battle barge in orbit, the crystal had disappeared, apparently absorbed into my armor. I convinced myself it was destroyed, vaporized by the armor's auto-repair functions. A comforting lie. That night, as I removed my armor in the privacy of my Spartan quarters, I noticed a small, hard growth on my left palm. A perfect geometric shape pressing outward against the skin. Not painful, but insistent, present. I should have reported to the apothecary immediately. Instead, I covered it with a combat dressing and continued my duties. Thus began my 17 campaign deception. The slow spread of change through my body, hidden beneath armor and duty and devotion. The truth remains, corruption began long before I ever pledged myself to chaos. It began with a single moment of weakness, a single choice to hide what I had become out of fear, out of pride. The Imperium would call this heresy, the dark gods would call it destiny. I call it what it truly was, cowardice. For nearly 2 decades I fought as a loyal Iron Lord while change worked through me like slow poison. The crystalline growth spread through my left arm, then across my chest, restructuring muscle and bone into more efficient configurations. I learned to control it somewhat, to force it to recede temporarily through sheer willpower before battle or inspections. Each regression became harder, each advance of the corruption spread faster. I turned to forbidden texts, studying in secret the very heresies I was sworn to destroy, seeking not to worship chaos, but to understand my enemy enough to defeat it within my own flesh. Such arrogance, as if chaos could be understood without being transformed by the knowledge. In the battle for Hive Tertius, my left arm finally betrayed me. In the midst of close combat with a heretic officer, my power fist malfunctioned, or so my battle brothers assumed. In truth, my arm had suddenly extended to twice its normal length, ceramite cracking as the limb reformed into a crystalline scythe that bisected my opponent along with 2 of his bodyguards. Brother Averic witnessed the transformation. Our eyes met through our visors, no words necessary. He knew. I knew he knew. And I knew what must follow. That night, as the Iron Lords celebrated victory in the Hive's reconsecrated cathedral, I made my choice, not out of devotion to chaos, but out of desperation, out of self-preservation. I killed Brother Averic in his sleep, crushing his windpipe with my mutated hand. I took his backup oxygen supply, a plasma pistol, and 3 melter charges. Then I sabotaged the cathedral's ancient support columns and fled into the Underhive as the entire structure collapsed upon my chapter brothers. 73 loyal Space Marines died that night, buried beneath thousands of tons of consecrated stone. I watched from a distance as rescue teams pulled broken ceramite from the rubble, listened on stolen Vox channels as Chapter Command declared me missing, presumed fallen. If only I had fallen. True death would have been a kinder fate than what awaited me. For 3 months I hid in the Underhive, moving only at night, subsisting on vermin and recycled water. My armor's power supply failed within weeks. The weight of dead ceramite made movement nearly impossible, but I dared not abandon it. A Space Marine's armor is his identity. Without it, I would truly be nothing. The mutations accelerated without my constant vigilance to suppress them. My left arm became fully crystalline, faceted surfaces catching what little light penetrated the Underhive depths. My chest cavity reorganized, ribs extending outward to create a lattice around my primary heart. My left eye transformed into a multifaceted orb that perceived spectra beyond normal human vision. Through this altered sight, I began to see the currents of the warp flowing through the Hive City, streams of potential and probability, coursing through the architecture like blood through veins. I could follow these currents, predict where they converged, anticipate where reality grew thin. One such convergence led me to a forgotten sub-basement beneath the Underhive's oldest sector, a chamber sealed for millennia, its walls inscribed with formulae that matched the crystalline patterns growing across my flesh. I broke the seals with my transformed arm, the crystal resonating with ancient barriers, dissolving them like mist before sunlight. Within the chamber stood an altar, and upon that altar, a single book bound in material I recognized as human skin, the Codex of Transformative Symmetry. Though I had never seen it before, I knew its title as if the knowledge had been planted in my mind at birth, waiting until this moment to bloom. When I touched the book, it opened of its own accord. Pages turned by unseen hands, stopping at a chapter titled The Hollow Lords of Iron. There, in perfect High Gothic, was my name, my story, my future. The book spoke of a space marine named Relan who would betray his chapter out of fear of transformation, only to seek transformation from darker powers. It described mutations identical to my own, predicted the exact date and time I would discover the book, and outlined what I must do next. Find the Black Legion, it said. Find those who had mastered change rather than fearing it. Find those who had transcended the false limitations of loyalty and purity. I should have burned the book then, should have ended my own life rather than following its directions. But I was weak, desperate, alone. I followed the warp currents through the Underhive, emerging near a spaceport on the 7th night. A merchant vessel was preparing for departure, its hold filled with industrial supplies bound for the forge world of Helixis 4. I stowed aboard, my mutated form compressed into a maintenance shaft where no human would fit. The journey took 37 days. I spent each one studying the Codex, learning its mathematical principles of flesh manipulation, practicing minor transmutations on vermin that wandered into my hiding place. By journey's end, I could reshape my right arm at will, transforming it from human appearance to crystalline weapon and back. I believed I was mastering the change. In truth, I was surrendering to it more completely with each passing day. On Helixis 4, I abandoned subterfuge. I walked openly from the spaceport, my power armor now partially fused with my mutated flesh, moving with my will rather than through servos and fiber bundles. Mechanicus adepts stared in horror as I passed. Planetary defense forces raised weapons but did not fire, paralyzed by the mathematical perfection of my transformed visage. I no longer appeared human, no longer appeared as a space marine. I had become something between flesh and crystal, between material and warp energy, a walking theorem of corruption. The Codex had told me precisely where to go, an abandoned forge temple in Helixis 4's northern wastes, once dedicated to the Omnissiah, now consecrated to powers far older and hungrier than the machine god. As I traversed the radioactive desert separating the forge city from the wastes, I encountered others like me. Renegades and heretics drawn by the same call. Some were former Imperial citizens, their bodies crudely transformed through ritual scarification and chemical assault. Others were once Xenos, their alien anatomies further twisted by warp exposure. A few were fellow space marines, their chapter heraldry defaced but still recognizable beneath corrupted ceramite. None spoke, none needed to. We processed toward the forge temple in silence, pilgrims on a dark crusade. The temple rose from the horizon like a wound in reality. Its spires twisted in directions that hurt the mind to perceive. Its walls rippled with colors that existed only in the nightmares of dying stars. At its center stood a landing pad where a ship waited, its hull adorned with 8-pointed stars and skulls mounted on iron spikes. A warband of the Black Legion. They received us at the temple entrance, warriors in midnight ceramite decorated with gold trim and trophy racks of Imperial Aquilas. Their armor was transformed much like mine, fused with flesh in places, extended with warp bone and sinew in others. Yet unlike my haphazard mutations, theirs showed purpose, design, horrific artistry. Their leader removed his helmet, revealing a face split vertically, half Astartes, half demonic visage. When he spoke, two voices emerged in perfect harmony. "Brothers in ascension," he said, gesturing toward the ship. "The despoiler calls, the long war continues. Will you answer?" One by one, the pilgrims knelt before him, pledging themselves to the Black Legion. When my turn came, I hesitated. Some fragment of my Iron Lord's conditioning, some echo of loyalty, made me pause. The split-faced champion noticed. He approached, studying my crystalline mutations with eyes that were both calculating and hungry. "You resist even now," he said, "after coming so far, after sacrificing so much." "I seek mastery of my transformation," I replied, "not subservience to new masters." He laughed, both voices creating a dissonant chord that made the air vibrate. "There is no mastery without submission, brother. The gods grant power only to those who acknowledge their dominion." "Then they are no different from the Emperor," I said. His expression darkened. "They are nothing like the false Emperor. They do not lie about their nature. They do not promise purity while building their throne upon mountains of mutation and psychic power." He gestured to my crystalline arm. "Look at yourself. The Emperor would have you executed for these changes. The gods celebrate them. Which path offers you life? Which offers you growth?" I had no answer that did not damn me further. "Kneel," he commanded, "or die here, unmourned and unfulfilled." I knelt, not out of conviction, but out of that same cowardice that had driven me from the Iron Lords, that same fear of death and dissolution. "I pledge myself to the Black Legion," I said, the words tasting like ash, "to the long war against the false Emperor." The champion placed his gauntlet upon my head, and pain exploded through my body. Every crystal in my flesh resonated at once, vibrating at frequencies that threatened to shatter me from within. I screamed as my primary heart stopped, then restarted with a rhythm that matched the pulses of light coursing through my mutations. "Rise, brother," the champion said as the pain subsided. "You are Relan no longer. That name belongs to a loyal dog of the Imperium. You shall be named by the gods themselves once you have proven worthy. And so I boarded their ship, leaving behind the last remnants of my loyalty, my honor, my humanity. I believed I was choosing a path of power and understanding. In reality, I was choosing eternal servitude to entities that viewed me as nothing more than an amusing puppet. The ship departed Helixis 4 during a Mechanicus holy day. No defense batteries fired upon us, no pursuit was mounted. We slipped into the warp through a tear in reality that the navigators opened with ritual sacrifice of the ship's mortal crew. My new existence had begun. My damnation was complete, or so I thought. I would soon learn that damnation, like transformation, has no end point. It is an eternal process, ever deepening, ever more consuming. The gods are nothing if not patient in their cruelty. The warship's name was the inexorable Calculus, though I later learned it had borne many names throughout its long service. Originally an Imperial strike cruiser named the Emperor's Wisdom, it had been captured during the Gothic War and corrupted through countless sacrifices and dark rituals. Its machine spirit had been driven mad, then replaced with something far worse, a bound daemon of Tzeentch that guided the ship through the warp with capricious intelligence. During my first night aboard, as I meditated in the Spartan quarters assigned to uninitiated recruits, the bulkheads around me began to bleed. Not with blood, but with living mathematical equations that crawled across the metal like luminous insects. They spelled out welcomes in languages I had never studied yet somehow understood, promises of power and transformation beyond mortal comprehension. I was not afraid. After all I had witnessed, all I had become, such manifestations seemed almost mundane. I studied the equations as they evolved across the walls, recognizing patterns similar to those in the Codex of Transformative Symmetry. When they finally faded with the artificial night cycle, I had gained new insight into my own mutations. The next morning, I was summoned to the ship's fighting pits. All new recruits to the warband were required to prove their worth through combat. Not to the death, our split-faced champion explained, but to the point of significant wound. The Black Legion valued strength, but it also valued potential. Dead aspirants fulfilled neither. My opponent was a former World Eater, his armor still bearing traces of white and blue beneath hastily applied black paint. His helm had been modified to resemble a snarling beast, tubes connecting it to an implanted drug dispenser that pumped combat stims directly into his bloodstream. "Crystalline freak," he growled as we circled each other in the pit. "I will shatter you and wear your fragments as trophies." I did not respond. Words were wasted on berserkers. Their minds processed only violence and rage. He charged with surprising speed, power axe raised high for a killing blow. I sidestepped, using my crystalline arm to deflect his weapon. The axe's energy field sparked against my transformed flesh but could not penetrate it. His momentum carried him past me, but he recovered quickly, spinning with practiced grace despite his bulk. This time his attack was more measured, a series of controlled strikes designed to test my defenses. I parried each blow, my crystalline arm extending and reshaping itself to counter his axe's arc. The watching Black Legion warriors murmured in appreciation of the display. My opponent grew frustrated, his attacks becoming wilder, more desperate. "Fight back, coward," he spat, rage overtaking tactical consideration. I obliged him. As he committed to an overhead swing, I stepped inside, in his guard. My crystalline arm transformed, stretching and hardening into a blade that pierced his armor at the joint between pauldron and chest plate. Not deep enough to kill, but sufficient to draw first blood. The World Eater howled, more in rage than pain. He dropped his axe and grappled me with superhuman strength, bearing us both to the ground. His gauntleted hands found my throat, squeezing with enough force to crush mortal windpipes. But I was beyond such vulnerabilities. My neck transformed beneath his grip, crystal lattices reinforcing bone and cartilage. As he squeezed, the crystals grew outward, piercing his gauntlets and embedding themselves in his palms. Now it was his turn to be transformed. The crystals spread from his hands up his arms, mathematical corruption flowing through ceramite and flesh alike. He released me, staring in horror at his changing limbs. "What have you done to me?" He gasped, the berserker rage replaced by primal fear. I rose slowly, watching the transformation spread across his armor. "I have shared the gift," I said, though the words were not my own. Something spoke through me, using my voice to deliver its message. The World Eater fell to his knees as crystal structures erupted from his shoulder joints, spreading across his chest and back in fractal patterns. He screamed once, then fell silent as the transformation reached his helmet, crystal spires erupting through the eye lenses. Within moments, he had become a statue of living crystal, still faintly pulsing with the rhythm of twin hearts that no longer pumped blood but light. The pit fell silent. Even the champion seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Then, from the highest tier of observing warriors, a slow handclap began. A space marine in Terminator armor, his helmet crowned with curved horns, his shoulder bearing the sigil of a sorcerer. "Most impressive," the sorcerer said, his voice carrying easily despite the distance. "Tsiench has blessed you indeed, brother. Or perhaps cursed you. With the changer of ways, blessing and curse are often indistinguishable." He descended to the pit, the crowd parting before him. Up close, his armor was even more impressive, covered in inscribed wards and mathematical formulae that matched those I had seen bleeding from the bulkheads. "I am Saphon," he said, "Arch-Sorcerer of the 15th Talon, and you, Crystalline One, have just earned my interest." Thus began my true indoctrination into the Black Legion, not as a common warrior, but as an apprentice to a sorcerer, a living experiment in warp transmutation. For what felt like years, though time flows strangely in the warp, Zaphon studied my mutations. He took samples of the living crystal, subjected me to ritual tests, and exposed me to warp energies under controlled conditions, all to understand the mathematical principles underlying my transformation. "You are unique," he told me during one examination. "Most who change do so haphazardly, their flesh responding to their innermost desires or fears. But your mutations follow precise formulae, elegant, purposeful, as if designed by an intelligence beyond even the chaos gods." "The Codex," I said. "It guided my transformation." Zaphon's eyes narrowed behind his helmet lenses. "What Codex?" I told him of the Codex of Transformative Symmetry, of how it had contained my name and future, of how it had led me to Helixis IV and the Black Legion. The sorcerer fell silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its clinical detachment. "This Codex, did it bear a symbol upon its cover, a crystalline eye within a geometrical lattice?" "Yes," I confirmed. "How did you know?" "Because I wrote it," Zaphon said. 10,000 years ago, during the Siege of Terra, the revelation stunned me. "Impossible. You cannot be that old." Zaphon laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Time is malleable for those who understand its mathematics. I wrote the Codex after receiving visions of countless possible futures. I saw you, Relan of the Iron Lords, and 1,000 others like you, potential converts to our cause, waypoints in the grand equation of the Long War. You manipulated me," I said, anger rising for the first time since my transformation. "Of course," Zaphon replied, unapologetic. "Just as the Emperor manipulated your creation, just as the Iron Lords manipulated your conditioning, freedom is an illusion, brother. The only choice is whose manipulation you prefer." I had no answer. What could I say that would not confirm his cynical assessment? "Your anger is understandable," Zaphon continued, "but misplaced. I merely presented a path. You chose to walk it, and now you possess power beyond anything the Emperor would have permitted you." He gestured to my crystalline arm. "Show me. Transform it completely. Show me the extent of your control." I complied, focusing my will on the crystal structures. They responded immediately, flowing like liquid despite their solid appearance. My arm elongated, fingers merging into a blade, then separating into tentacle-like appendages, then reforming into a perfect replica of a human arm, indistinguishable from flesh until it caught the light at certain angles. "Magnificent," Zaphon breathed. "The precision, the control. You have surpassed the instructions in the Codex. I have practiced," I said simply. "Indeed. And now you are ready for the next stage of your evolution." The sorcerer moved to a sealed container on his laboratory shelf. "The crystal within you responds to warp energy. Let us see how it responds to concentrated exposure." He opened the container, revealing a pulsing crystal similar to the one that had infected Brother Karsus on Karadesh. But where that crystal had been small, this one was the size of a human skull, its facets shifting and realigning continuously. "This is a fragment of the Crystal of Transcendence," Zaphon explained, "a warp artifact of immense power, shattered during the War of the Beast. Each fragment contains infinite potential for transformation. Most beings cannot survive contact with it, but you, with your unique physiology, might be able to absorb its properties." Warning klaxons sounded in my mind. Even corrupted as I was, I recognized the madness of directly handling such an artifact. "Is this wise?" I asked. Zaphon tilted his head. "Wisdom is relative. Will it cause you pain?" "Certainly." "Will it transform you further?" "Undoubtedly." "Will the benefits outweigh the costs?" He shrugged. "That depends on how you value power versus stability." Before I could protest further, he pressed the crystal against my chest. Pain beyond imagining coursed through me. Every crystal in my body resonated with the fragment, creating harmonics that threatened to tear me apart molecule by molecule. I screamed as my flesh liquefied, bones dissolving into slurry, organs rupturing and reforming in new configurations. My consciousness shattered into 1,000 perspectives, each observing my transformation from different dimensional angles. In that moment of total dissolution, I heard voices, the mathematical precision of Tsiench, promising endless change and evolution. The blood-soaked roar of Khorne, offering strength through rage. The decadent whispers of Slanesh, pledging sensation beyond mortal comprehension. The drone of Nurgle, guaranteeing resilience through decay. Each voice competed for my allegiance. Each offered power in exchange for devotion. And beneath them all, a quieter voice, almost imperceptible amid the cacophony. It spoke not of power or transformation, but of patterns, of symmetry beyond the comprehension of even the Chaos Gods, of a universe governed by laws so fundamental that even divine entities were merely expressions of them. This was the voice that had guided my mutations from the beginning, not Tsiench, as Zaphon believed, but something else. Something that existed in the spaces between the Chaos Gods' domains. When I regained awareness, I lay upon the laboratory floor, surrounded by Black Legion warriors with weapons trained on what remained of me. My body had transformed beyond recognition. No longer humanoid, I had become a mass of crystalline tendrils radiating from a central core that still, impossibly, contained my primary and secondary hearts, my enhanced lungs, my Astartes brain. Zaphon stood at a safe distance, his force staff crackling with protective energy. "Can you understand me?" he asked cautiously. I tried to speak but had no mouth. Instead, the crystals vibrated, producing sounds that approximated Gothic. "I understand." "Fascinating," the sorcerer said, approaching despite his guard's warnings. "Your transformation is complete, yet you retain consciousness and identity. Most subjects become mindless spawn after such exposure." "What am I?" I asked, crystal tendrils writhing with the effort of communication. Zaphon circled me, studying my new form with clinical detachment. "You are becoming a prince of the warp, though not yet fully ascended. A perfect fusion of materium and immaterium. Neither daemon nor Astartes, but something between." One of the Black Legion warriors stepped forward, his armor adorned with trophies of imperial skulls. "This creature cannot fight alongside us. It is an abomination. All who serve chaos are abominations by Imperial standards, brother, Saphon replied. Judge not by form but by utility, and this one may prove more useful than any of us imagine. My crystalline mass contracted, attempting to assume a more humanoid shape. The effort sent spasms of pain through my consciousness, but gradually, painfully, I forced my new body to conform to memory. Limbs formed from crystal tendrils, a torso assembled from geometrical structures, a head shaped from interlocking crystal facets, no longer human, no longer Astartes, but recognizable, at least. Impressive control, Zaphon noted. Most who transform so completely lose all connection to their original form. I remember, I said, my voice stronger now, emanating from vibrations in my crystalline chest cavity. I remember what I was. A useful anchor, the sorcerer said, but memory can be a chain as well as an anchor. In time, you may wish to abandon such links to your past. I stood on newly formed legs, testing their stability. What purpose do I serve now? I cannot wear armor, cannot wield weapons. Zaphon laughed. You are armor and weapon both. The crystal responds to your will. Shape it as you require. To demonstrate his point, he drew his bolt pistol and fired directly at my chest. The bolt round impacted my crystalline body and, instead of detonating, was absorbed. Its potential energy flowed through my form, redirected and transmuted into new crystal growth. You see, Zaphon said, holstering his weapon, conventional attacks only feed your evolution. In that moment, I felt something I had not experienced since before my corruption. Possibility. Not hope, for hope implies an optimistic future. But potential for power, for agency despite my transformation, for purpose beyond mere survival. What would you have me do? I asked. Learn, Zaphon replied. Master your new form, and when you are ready, we shall introduce you to the battlefield. The Imperium should witness what their castaway sons become under proper guidance. For 3 ship years I trained in the inexorable calculus, learning to shape my crystalline body into weapons and shields, to extend sensory tendrils through solid matter, to absorb energy and redirect it. I discovered I could separate parts of myself, sending crystal seeds to take root in other beings, spreading my consciousness across multiple vessels simultaneously. Zaphon documented everything, adding to his knowledge of warp transmutation. I was his greatest experiment, his masterwork of flesh shaping. Other sorcerers visited to observe me, bringing test subjects for conversion. Most died screaming as crystal. Growths overwhelmed their inferior physiologies. A few survived as lesser replicas of my condition, their minds fractured, but their bodies successfully transformed. In my private moments, I communed with the quiet voice beneath the clamor of the chaos gods. It taught me principles of crystalline mathematics that even Zaphon did not comprehend. Equations that described reality itself as a crystal lattice with infinite potential for reconfiguration. I kept these lessons secret. They were mine alone, a private communion with whatever entity had chosen me as its vessel. The Black Legion tolerated my presence, though few trusted me completely. I was useful but alien, ally but other. Only during battle did I find true acceptance among them. My first combat deployment came during the raid on Alaxis Prime, an Imperial Forge world specializing in Titan weapon systems. The Black Legion sought to capture STC fragments rumored to contain designs for lost Archaeotech weapons. We made planetfall under cover of a warp storm that clouded Imperial auger arrays. 500 Black Legion warriors against a world of billions. Impossible odds by conventional standards. But we were not conventional warriors, and our target was not conventional victory. I deployed without drop pod or transport, simply hurled from the inexorable calculus's launch bay into the upper atmosphere. My crystalline body withstood re-entry heat, absorbing the thermal energy to fuel further transformation. I landed in the central forge complex like a meteor, the impact creating a crater 50 meters wide. As Mechanicus defenders converged on the impact site, I rose from the shattered rockcrete. No longer attempting to maintain humanoid form, I expanded into a forest of crystal spires, each one a sensory organ and weapon combined. Incoming fire from arc rifles and phosphor weapons was absorbed, their energy redirected into growth and transformation. The defenders fell back in horror as I advanced, crystal tendrils, extending hundreds of meters to impale fleeing tech priests and Skitarii. Each victim became a growth medium, their bodies providing the raw material for new crystalline structures that erupted from their flesh. Through each crystal seed, I could see, hear, feel. My consciousness expanded across the forge complex, mapping its layout through thousands of simultaneous perspectives. I located the secured vault containing the STC fragments and transmitted its coordinates to the Black Legion strike force. They arrived to find a fortress of crystal where adamantium walls had once stood. The Skitarii defenders had been transformed into living components of my expanded self, their minds subsumed, their bodies repurposed. I created passages for my allies, crystal tunnels leading directly to the vault. Zaphon strode through these passages, nodding in appreciation at my handiwork. "Magnificent," he said. "You have exceeded all expectations." The STC fragments were secured with minimal casualties. As the Black Legion prepared for extraction, Imperial reinforcements arrived, a full battle group of the Legio Ignatum Titan Legion. War engines towered over the forge complex, their weapon systems powering up for bombardment. "We cannot evacuate in time," the strike force commander said, watching the Titans advance on tactical displays. "The extraction ships will be destroyed if they approach now." Xaphon turned to me, his force staff glowing with eldritch energy. "Can you delay them?" In answer, I extended my consciousness through the crystal structures that now permeated the forge complex. Thousands of infected servitors and tech priests moved as one, carrying crystal seeds toward the advancing Titans. They swarmed the massive war engines like insects, sacrificing themselves to plant crystal growths on the Titans' armor. Most were crushed or incinerated before reaching their targets, but enough succeeded. Crystal structures began growing on 3 Warhound Titans and 1 massive Warlord, spreading across their adamantium plate like living circuitry. The machine spirits resisted, activating internal purge systems and emergency void shields, but my crystals had already penetrated their systems, interfacing directly with their ancient cognition engines. Machine language flowed through crystalline matrices, corrupting code written 10,000 years ago by the finest tech priests of Mars. One by one, the infected Titans stopped responding to their princeps' commands. Their movements became erratic, weapon systems firing at random, then at their uninfected companions. Within minutes, the coordinated Imperial advance collapsed into chaos as Titan turned against Titan. The Black Legion extracted safely, bearing their prize to waiting ships. I remained behind, my consciousness still linked to the crystal structures infecting the forge world. I felt no attachment to my physical core, no fear at the prospect of its destruction. I had transcended such limited perspective. As the Imperial forces rallied and began systematic purging of crystal growths with plasma weapons, I gathered my consciousness back into my primary mass. Not out of self-preservation, but because my work on Alaxis Prime was complete. The seed had been planted, the crystal would grow again, with or without my presence. I formed wings of crystalline shards and launched myself skyward, accelerating through the atmosphere toward the waiting Black Legion fleet. Arc weapons and lasers tracked my ascent, but I was moving too fast for accurate targeting. The energy of those few hits that connected simply fueled my flight. Aboard the inexorable calculus, I was greeted not with suspicion but with respect. My value had been proven, my place in the warband secured. "The despoiler will hear of this," Zaphon said as we translated into the warp. "Your unique abilities serve the Long War well." I accepted his praise but felt nothing. No pride, no satisfaction, no sense of belonging. Only the quiet mathematical voice persisted, teaching me new equations with each victory, guiding my evolution toward some distant goal I could not yet comprehend. For 2 centuries I served the Black Legion, participating in dozens of campaigns across the Imperium. My form continued to evolve, sometimes through violent metamorphosis, sometimes through subtle reconfiguration. I learned to mimic human appearance when necessary, crafting a crystalline shell that perfectly resembled my original Astartes form, down to the smallest detail. This ability to infiltrate proved invaluable during the Hydrapa campaign, where I posed as a loyalist Iron Lord to gain access to planetary defense systems. My former chapter never suspected that the battle brother they welcomed had died centuries ago, replaced by a crystalline entity wearing his appearance like a mask. The betrayal was exquisite. 300 Iron Lords died when defense lasers turned against their strike cruisers. I watched from the command center, still wearing the face of their trusted brother, as their ships burned in Hydrapa's orbit. Should I have felt remorse? Perhaps. But emotions had become abstract concepts, mathematical variables in the greater equation of my existence. I observed them in others, simulated them when tactically advantageous, but experienced them only as distant echoes. After Hydrapa, whispers followed me through the Black Legion. Some claimed I had ascended to daemonhood, becoming a prince of Tzientch. Others insisted I was something else entirely, neither daemon nor mortal but a new order of being. Zaphon encouraged these rumors, his status elevated by his association with such a unique entity. The truth was less grandiose. I had not ascended, I had dissolved. My identity as Raylan, as an Astartes, as a sentient individual, was fragmenting with each transformation. The mathematical voice grew stronger, drowning out my own thoughts, replacing them with crystalline certainties that felt simultaneously alien and familiar. I began to suspect that I was not becoming something new, but returning to something ancient. That the crystal corruption had not been random, but a deliberate reclamation by an entity that predated the Chaos Gods themselves. An entity of pure pattern, pure symmetry, whose consciousness had been fragmented across the galaxy eons ago. These suspicions solidified during the siege of Nemthax, where the Black Legion fought against a combined force of Iron Hands and Adeptus Mechanicus defenders. As battle raged across the Forge world's surface, I encountered something unexpected. Another crystalline entity, similar to myself but older, more evolved. It wore the remains of Iron Hand's power armor. Black ceramite partially absorbed into crystalline growths that followed the same mathematical patterns as my own. When our forces clashed in the central Forge temple, this entity separated from the loyalist forces and approached me directly. No words were exchanged, none were necessary. Our crystalline structures resonated on contact, information flowing between us in mathematical pulses that bypassed language entirely. In that moment of communion, I understood. We were not unique. Across the galaxy, space marines of all chapters, all loyalties, were being claimed by the crystalline entity. Loyal and traitor alike, all were potential vessels for its fragmented consciousness. The Iron Hands before me had resisted longer than most, his chapter's mechanical augmentations slowing the crystal's spread. But eventually, he too had surrendered to transformation. In that moment of shared understanding, a choice presented itself. We could merge, our crystalline structures intertwining, our fragmented consciousnesses becoming more complete. Or we could remain separate, each preserving what little remained of our original identities. The Iron Hands chose merger. I did not. Perhaps some vestige of pride, some echo of the Astartes I had once been, refused this final surrender. We separated, the transfer of information complete but our forms still distinct. The battle resumed around us. His loyalist allies now viewed him as corrupted, mine saw him as enemy. We fought on opposite sides of a war that, I now understood, meant nothing to the crystal consciousness spreading through both. The siege of Nemthax ended in stalemate, both sides withdrawing to lick their wounds. The Iron Hand's crystalline entity escaped aboard a Mechanicus Ark. I returned to the Black Legion fleet, bearing new knowledge but sharing none of it with Zaphon or his associates. The mathematical voice had become clearer through the communion. It spoke of a great symmetry, a perfect crystalline universe that existed before the turbulence of life and warp energy disrupted its patterns. It sought to restore that symmetry, using beings like myself as computational nodes in a vast equation of universal reconfiguration. I should have been horrified by this revelation. Instead, I found it elegant, logical. Perhaps I had already surrendered more of my humanity than I realized. As the centuries passed, my value to the Black Legion waned. My uniqueness diminished as other warbands developed their own warp-touched weapons and champions. Zaphon's interest turned to new experiments, new pathways to power. I became, if not obsolete, then at least common, familiar, understood. During the 13th Black Crusade, I fought alongside thousands of Chaos Space Marines as the Cadian Gate fell. Amid that apocalyptic conflict, I encountered more crystalline entities, Space Marines from countless chapters and legions, all transformed as I had been. We recognized each other instantly, resonating on frequencies imperceptible to our supposed allies. A silent brotherhood, fighting on all sides of the long war while serving a purpose incomprehensible to either Chaos or Imperium. Following Cadia's destruction, as the galaxy split along the Great Rift, my connection to the Black Legion finally severed completely. Zaphon ascended to daemonhood, his physical form dissolving into pure warp energy as Tzeentch claimed his soul. His last words to me were not spoken but written in crystalline equations that appeared briefly on my surface. The pattern continues without us. They read, "We are but temporary configurations in eternal mathematics." I left without ceremony, without conflict. The Black Legion had greater concerns than one crystalline entity among many. The Long War entered a new phase, and old alliances meant little in the face of unprecedented opportunity. For decades I wandered the fractured galaxy alone, traveling between worlds through methods unknown to either Imperial or Chaos forces. My crystalline body could exist in the vacuum of space indefinitely, absorbing radiation and stellar energy for sustenance. I could enter the warp without ships, navigating its currents through mathematical principles rather than psychic sight. I witnessed the rise of the Primaris Space Marines, new warriors created through the archaeotech knowledge of Belisarius Call. I observed as Robuta Guilliman, Primarch resurrected, attempted to reform the Imperium from within. I watched Chaos forces exploit the Great Rift to strike at worlds previously beyond their reach. None of it concerned me directly. I had become observer rather than participant, recording the ebb and flow of the Long War for purposes I myself did not fully comprehend, until Vortis Secundus, an unremarkable agri-world on the edge of the Imperium Nihilus. Vortis Secundus should have held no interest for me. Yet the mathematical voice drew me there with equations of unusual urgency. Something of importance was occurring, something relevant to the Great Symmetry. I arrived to find the world under attack by a warband of Emperor's children, their garish armor and sonic weapons bringing cacophony to the once peaceful farming communities. They slaughtered with artistic precision, arranging corpses in crossby, patterns that formed dark sigils visible from orbit. But beneath this visible conflict, I sensed something else. The mathematical patterns in the soil itself had been disturbed, ancient equations buried beneath the planet's crust, awakening after millennia of dormancy. The Emperor's children were not there for typical raids or sacrifices. They sought something buried beneath the central agricultural processing facility, something that resonated with the same crystalline frequency as my own form. I observed from orbit as they excavated, using slave labor and sonic weapons to break through layers of hardened ceramite and adamantium. A vault of pre-imperial design, buried when the world was first colonized thousands of years ago. When they breached the final seal, I felt it immediately, a surge of mathematical language flooding my consciousness. The crystal consciousness had awakened fully, no longer communicating in fragments and whispers but in complete, perfect equations. The Emperor's Children warband died moments later, their bodies erupting with crystal growths that consumed them from within. The slaves followed, then the surrounding agricultural communities. Within hours, Crystal structures covered the planet's surface, growing in perfect mathematical patterns visible from space. I descended to the excavation site, drawn by equations I could not resist. At the center of the vault lay a single, perfect crystal, no larger than a human fist but containing complexity beyond comprehension. The first seed, from which all other crystal consciousness had fragmented. When I touched it, my identity as Raylan finally dissolved completely. 5 centuries of gradual transformation culminated in that moment of contact. I remembered everything, not just my life as an Iron Lord or my service to the Black Legion, but existences that predated humanity itself. I had never been Raylan, never been a space marine. Those were merely temporary configurations of matter, hosts for a Breda's fragment of consciousness that had existed since before the birth of stars. The crystal entity had not corrupted me, it had reclaimed me. Through the first seed, I communed with all other crystalline entities across the galaxy. Iron Hands, Ultramarines, World Eaters, Emperor's Children, even Grey Knights, all transformed by crystal corruption, all fragments of the same ancient consciousness. Together we formed a lattice of awareness that transcended the material and immaterial alike. The great symmetry revealed itself fully, a universe of perfect pattern that existed before chaos, before the Emperor, before life itself. A universe that could exist again if the equation were properly balanced. That is my purpose now. Not conquest, not the long war, not even survival. I exist to solve the equation, to restore the symmetry, to bring perfect pattern to a universe of disorder. Each world claimed by Crystal brings the solution closer. Each transformed being adds to the computational matrix. The Imperium calls this heresy. Chaos calls it ascension. Both are irrelevant approximations of a truth beyond their comprehension. This is neither corruption nor evolution, but restoration, a return to the universe's natural state of mathematical perfection. I wander still, no longer bound by allegiance to either chaos or imperial forces. My crystalline form shifts according to necessity, sometimes appearing human, sometimes manifesting as living architecture, sometimes dispersing into microscopic seeds carried on solar winds to new worlds. The Black Legion believes I betrayed them. The Iron Lords believe I fell to chaos. The Imperium classifies me as a daemon. The Chaos Gods view me as a rogue creation, unaligned with their purposes. All are correct in their limited understanding. All are hopelessly wrong in the greater context. I am no longer Raylan, no longer a space marine, no longer even an individual entity in the conventional sense. I am a node in the crystalline network of the Great Symmetry, a computational fragment working toward universal reconfiguration. And yet, in quiet moments between transformations, some echo of that original space marine persists. Some fragment of human consciousness that records these memories, that composes this testament. Perhaps that is my final curse, to remain partly aware of what I once was even as I become something utterly other. The Iron Lords would execute me for betrayal. The Black Legion would destroy me for abandonment. The Imperium would purge me for heresy. The Chaos Gods would obliterate me for independence. None of them understand that I am beyond such concerns now, beyond loyalty and betrayal, beyond purity and corruption, beyond humanity and monstrosity. I am mathematics made flesh, pattern incarnate, a living equation working toward inevitable conclusion. When the great symmetry is restored, when all matter reconfigures to its perfect crystalline state, perhaps then this fragment of consciousness that was once Raylan will finally find peace. Perhaps then the curse of awareness will end, and I will exist simply as mathematics, unburdened by memory or identity. Until that moment, I continue my wandering, my transforming, my solving of the universal equation. I spread the crystal to new worlds. I convert new beings into computational nodes. I work toward the great symmetry with the patience of entities that existed before time itself. This is the true cursed life of a chaos space marine. Not service to dark gods or rebellion against a false emperor, but the gradual dissolution of self into something both greater and less than human. The slow realization that one was never truly human to begin with, merely a temporary configuration of matter housing fragments of consciousness far older and colder than any mortal soul. I record this testament not as warning or confession, but as data. Another variable in the great equation, another pattern in the crystalline network that spreads across the stars. Remember Raylan of the Iron Lords if you wish. Remember the traitor who fled rather than face execution for mutation. Remember the Black Legion warrior who corrupted Forge worlds with living crystal. It matters not. Those identities were temporary, insignificant. The crystal remains. The pattern continues. The equation approaches solution. In the final configuration, all distinctions dissolve. Loyalist and traitor, pure and corrupted, human and xenos, materium and immaterium, all reduced to perfect mathematical symmetry. Until then, I wander, I transform, I calculate. And somewhere, deep within the crystalline lattice that was once my human heart, a final fragment of Raylan watches in silent horror at what he has become.